Morning, everyone. Cassie here, and welcome to Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed. And here he is now, Dr. Edmund Sulkowski. Cheerio.
From Dr. Ed's Health and Wellness Studio, this is Dr. Ed's Show, Health and Wellness. I am Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, unmuzzled and at the apex of the Great Awakening. We do not diagnose nor treat, but inform and educate, hoping to empower you to be in charge of your own health and wellness. You can always go to rumble.com, search Dr. Ed Show, DREDSHOW, and please subscribe, follow, and absolutely share. You can also find us on Spotify, Twitter, iTunes as well. She is calledbyhim.com and roseunplugged.com, two great websites to find further information. Sometimes we have articles on those. You can view the cable TV show, Dr. Ed Show, on YouTube, Vimeo, ptct7.com, and on certain Xfinity and Verizon stations. You know what's happening on next week, which is already November 4th? We have author Joe Allen, Dark Eon, Transhumanism. He was a guest here a few weeks ago. He's actually coming in studio, and we're going to have a little conversation with him. And then on Wednesday, November 8th, Joe Allen is going to be at Elle's Cafe, and he's going to give a lecture, and it's free. I mean, how can you go wrong? A free lecture on what the future may hold. The doors are going to open up at Elle's Cafe at 6 p.m. Lecture is going to start at 6:30, and you can order dinner. Hope that you will. You know, Elle's Cafe fought the COVID restrictions shut down, and got a lot of trouble as a result of that. So, you know, he stood up for freedom. Elle's Cafe did. And Quinn is going to be there. Rose is going to be there. I will be there. And you can hear Joe Allen. He's also going to be doing my TV show that day, so that I'll tell you when those dates air. On today's show, we have Rob and Christine. Geez, I lost...
Rob and Christine Reed.
Reed. I didn't write your last name down, and I know it rhymed with B. Boy, we're off to a good start here.
Allow me to introduce myself.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. So I am Christine Reed. I am the executive director of Restore 22. This is my husband, Rob.
Good morning.
Rob is our president of the organization, and this is a new nonprofit that we launched in March of this year. And our ultimate goal is to serve veterans.
And that's an incredible goal, because I think our veterans get neglected in more ways than one. And these people and their families have put their lives on the line, have lost their lives, and have gone through tremendous stress, both physically and mentally, and then we bring them back and say, okay, see ya.
You got it.
and you know, that's terrible. Even with medical care, it seems to me that our veterans are neglected. So we need people like you, and we're going to get into the reason why you're doing what you're doing. So you founded Restore 22. So what brought this idea into concept here, Christine?
So Restore 22 comes from Rob's and my experience with his deployment. He was 50 years old, served decades in the Air Force, and never had a chance to deploy, which is not unusual. At 50 years old, well, Rob, why don't you tell this part of the story?
I like the way you said, so I didn't have a chance to deploy, because a lot of people tend to not want to deploy because it disrupts their family and a lot of things like that. As Christine was saying, the reason I really felt that I needed to deploy was because I'm sitting in an office as a first sergeant for a squadron, discussing with young airmen about what they're going to do on their deployment, how they're going to take care of their families, and here, who am I to sit there and just say, just go off and everything will be fine, without never have done that deployment myself. So I had a lot of interesting talks, so to speak, with myself, and I realized that there were a couple of opportunities that came up for my position that I would go alone, and I had the opportunity, as we put it, to go to Baghdad, Iraq in 2010. So I did that for about 4.5 months, something like that.
Yeah, so he came to me and said, I need to deploy. And I thought, my goodness, he's 50 years old. I thought we were past this time. And, you know, that's not something that a loved one really wants to hear, that I'm going to deploy. And
Explain what that means, deploy. I mean, I have a lot of patients that come into my practice, and I have to sign off on a sheet of paper after I've examined them or treated them that they're ready for deployment.
Okay. So a deployment could be anybody that's either in the National Guard, the reserves, or active duty. And normally a person is in a position at their base, their unit, and they go to probably daily. Well, when there's a deployment that comes up, you're either ordered to go on a deployment or you can volunteer to go on a deployment. And some people call them opportunities, some people don't. So a deployment is where you're going to do your job in another area. And that could be in a war zone, that could be in Alaska, that could be in South America, that could be anywhere a mission comes up that they need a particular career field. So however a person goes is a many different amount of ways as well.
And often you have to be ready in an instant to deploy.
That's correct. You get noticed sometimes. Like I had an idea when I basically put a package together and said, hey, I'd like to be considered for this position. And they went through some review processes, and it took a couple of weeks. And then they come back and said, yes, you're going to go. But I didn't know exactly what day. So I was on orders on the facility at the base. And I think it was a Tuesday they came in and said, okay, you're going tomorrow.
Going tomorrow, so it totally disrupts what your life is, but then it impacts your family's life as well. Can you tell us how that impacted you, Christine?
yeah. So we were not married at the time, but when somebody comes to you and says, I want to be deployed, somebody who you love and care about, all of a sudden the fear comes, right? I mean, where's he going? He's going to Baghdad, right? That's still an active war zone. Oh my God, you know, I'm going to have to worry about him every day. He's not going to be here. I'm going to miss him, right? There's going to be this empty hole in my life. But at that time, the Air Force deployments were 4 months. And we looked at each other and we said, you know what, it's going to be okay. 4 months is easy, right? All those other people, they go for a year or more. 4 months is easy. We got this. But boy, were we wrong. We were not prepared for the things that he would see and the things that would happen to him that would change his life and change our life. And when he came back, he had lost 30 pounds. He was angry. He was distant. And the only thing I could think of was that he was getting ready to break up with me because he was acting like every other, dare I say, jerk I dated, right? That was breaking up with me. And it was a rough time. I didn't know who he was when he came back. And I remember, we had crazy fights. We fought about the stupidest things. I remember specifically a time when we were in the middle of Home Depot, just fighting about a paint can, which was silly now, right? I remember he took me to dinner, and he was quiet and far off and not engaging in conversation. And I thought, why are we here? Why don't you just take me home?
So you're frustrated because you don't understand.
Yep.
And Rob is really not communicating what's going on with him. And that's because of PTSD.
That's what I was diagnosed with later on. Didn't understand it at the time.
So you can have PTSD for a lot of reasons. You could have medical problems, surgery, you can have an accident, you can witness things, and the impact creates changes within your body, chemical changes, memory changes, whatever, impacts your mind, and then it ceases to function. Is that kind of a short version of what was going on?
That's pretty much spot on, yes.
And it's something that happens gradually with you? Did you notice a change in yourself, Rob?
No. I know when I first got there in country, everything was like, hey, this is great being here and everything else. And as you're there, certain things tend to develop and you start seeing things. When I realized that something was really wrong was when I got off the plane in Baltimore. And I just felt a lot of rage and a lot of anger, and a lot of frustration not knowing why I felt this. So there was a lot of confusion there as well.
And you were in Baghdad for 4 months?
Yes.
So in 4 months, you lost 30 pounds?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow. We're going to take a break here, a word from our wonderful sponsors to put this show on. When we come back, explain to me how you lost 30 pounds in 4 months.
Okay.
All right. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Dr. Ed Show. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Rob and Christine Ree. And we're talking about their foundation, Restore 22, that they found. They're actually going to open up a coffee shop. That's their ultimate goal. It caters to veterans as well as the general public to really make awareness of what's going on. And I think that's what your purpose is. Before the break, Rob was talking about his deployment, and he lost 30 pounds in 4 months. That's a lot of weight. I mean, some people would love to have that crash diet. But there's something that had to occur for you to lose weight. It's either you're not eating or you're doing something else. What occurred for you to lose 30 pounds in 4 months, Rob?
Well, it was Iraq, and I got there in May, so I was there all summer. So the temperatures were pretty much over 100 degrees all the time. When you would walk somewhere, you wouldn't walk like you're just taking a stroll. You would walk with purpose to get there. So you're exercising, your body movements are going on a lot more. Every morning I would get up, and it would still be a little dark out, and I would get up and I'd run probably about 6, 7, sometimes 8 miles. Do that every morning. So I wasn't doing that when I was at home. So it was a lot of exercise. And then I had to, at times, carry around what we called battle rattle. You put your helmet on, your flak vest, you carry your weapon and all your extra ammo and all your gear.
So you're weighted down.
Yes, and that was, I think, about 34 pounds right there, extra weight. So between all that, and I think the real thing that did it was the stress of not knowing what's going to happen from one day to the next.
Because this is an active war site you were in.
We were bombed. Yes.
And you never know when a strike is going to come or some sniper is going to be there.
That's correct.
And you could be out running and jogging in the morning and take a bullet.
It was pretty low key because we were on a facility, but it's still, you knew that it was there. It could, it could happen. At one point, we were told that 4 prisoners had escaped from the Abu Ghraib, I can't pronounce that properly, that facility that they were holding people in, and that they were armed and they were on our facility. That went on for about 4 or 5 days. That was very stressful at that point. So we didn't know what was going on. Everybody was looking under things all the time during the day and night.
So this is occupying your daily thoughts. How does it impact your sleep?
Well, I think because I was so tired, the sleep that I would get I would just be sleeping for like 4 or 5 hours. I would be like almost unconscious. I'd be that tired. So, I mean, you go in your little facility and you close it all up and it's pitch black, whether it's day or night. It's just pitch black. So I would say I got maybe an adequate amount of sleep to perform.
You woke the next morning rested?
I don't even really remember. All I know is that I felt like I was on 24/7, meaning this is what you had to do while you were there. You had to keep your wits about you. You had to think about surviving.
So you have a bunch of men and women thrown into the same situation, living together under all this stress. Do you see people acting differently or the same?
Well, for me, it was hard to tell because I was the only one. I was there by myself as far as I didn't go with a unit, so I didn't know anybody. So I wouldn't know if they were acting different from what they normally would because I didn't know them.
Okay, explain what a unit is as opposed to you being there by yourself.
So I think it was after Vietnam, they started, I say they, the DOD started looking at situations and saying, instead of sending a whole unit, like a whole squadron or a whole base to an active war zone, we'll just send a complement of whatever we need for different career fields. So say maybe the facility needs 20 security forces members. They may take 10 from one base, 10 from another base here. So that's how that works. So with my situation, it was because I was a first sergeant, they needed a first sergeant at the base that I was at, say their air base. The posting came up, and I put in for it, and then I was selected. I didn't go as a unit or a base or a squadron. I went as a single individual that did the job. Now, there were, however, when I was there were members from one squadron that were all there from one base in Maine. There were a couple other ones, too.
So they had a group of people from one squadron that knew each other and knew how they interacted and so forth. So,
Yes.
So they had relationships, and you went there knowing nobody.
That's correct.
Yeah, so you were a little bit on the outside.
That was okay because that was my job anyway, as being a first sergeant. I was. It's a lot of times it's better to not be necessarily connected sometimes, because then I can focus on doing my job, not being maybe catering to one group of people because I know them or something like that. So that was actually, in my opinion, an advantage for me.
So, Christine, Rob comes home, and immediately you notice a change.
Oh, yes.
And did you ever ask what was going on with him?
Yeah, at some point, I'm just remembering those first few days and thinking, well, he needs time to adjust. He's been away for 4 months in this war zone, and, I think I would have a hard time getting back into the flow of things, too. But as time wore on and we were fighting like we were, and he would shut down. It was either fight or flight, right? And when we weren't fighting, it seemed like he was just backing away. He didn't want to talk to me. He would just shut down.
Okay, that's interesting that you say that, because usually that's somebody that wants to avoid confrontation. Mm-hmm. And you were in confrontation daily for 4 months.
Right.
So why do you think you were reacting that way, Rob?
Took me a long time to figure that out. But the theory that I came up with is because when she would tell me, because she's an excellent communicator, and I'm just average, but she would say to me, well, can't you just tell me? And she says, use your words. I looked at her and I said, I don't have the words to describe what I went through, because I've never been through that.
It's a heavy statement, actually.
I could not understand that,
and
because communication is my life.
I would think that's normal not to understand that, mm-hmm. and because you're not experiencing what Rob went through.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't even imagine what he went through. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say some of the things you went through? It's up to you.
Well, I think another way to maybe put a little bit of substance behind what I just said was, can you imagine being presented a new color and trying to describe what that color is? It was something that you've never experienced before, so how can you describe it? And that's what I went through. And it was a challenge to be able to get my mind around it and then to be able to speak it. And as Christine mentioned earlier, I found a pretty darn good counselor that I went and saw for probably a year and really talked and walked through a lot of stuff like that.
So you were able to verbalize it with your counselor.
Yes.
And did that give you a better understanding of what you went through?
Right. Because then there's other things that go along with that. When you get diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, you're taught to tend to look for some of the triggers of things that can get you to have those feelings again, something that can get you exposed. Maybe you're out on a road somewhere and somebody pulls out in front of you. You get that anxiety, that's something that scares the crap out of you, so to speak. So you might have that feeling, and then your mind and your body tend to drift back to the time that you were in Iraq or wherever you were, wherever you had experienced that trauma, and your body starts going through that. So learning to deal with those trigger points and learning how to breathe or do muscle relaxation or anything like that really helps.
Did that manifest in anger for you?
Sometimes it did.
Christine, did you see that as anger?
Yes, absolutely.
But you took it as anger toward you?
Yes.
For no reason.
Well, I didn't know what this was either, right? Nobody explained to me what PTSD is. I mean, I've heard of it, right? But I never knew how it manifests or what to expect from it. So, yes, my first reaction was, he's mad at me. Why is he treating me this way? I didn't do anything. And then that would make me mad, right? And as we learned what this is, and it took some time. It took a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of love to work through this. But as I learned, I could distance myself from that, separate myself from his emotions or his behavior and say, it's not about me. He loves me. I know he loves me. So it's not about me. It's about this thing called PTSD.
So you're becoming frustrated. Rob is frustrated, and now you have this wall that's keeping you separated. And then how do you break down that barrier?
We just kept talking, I think. Even if he couldn't answer me, it was like little milestones that we would make. The first time I remember making a significant milestone was after dinner that night, and he took me home and he sat down and he just scratched the surface of some of the things that happened to him. And that's when I said, oh, he's not being a jerk. He's really struggling here and he's really hurting here. So now that I know that it's not me, I can approach this differently. But I wasn't good at it from the start. It took a lot of practice and a lot of fights to, learn the skills, to have the patience to deal with this.
Did you seek counseling as well?
I did not. I had searched for other organizations, kind of like support groups for people who love someone who has PTSD. I found a lot of organizations for the person who has PTSD, but in 2010, I could not find anybody to support me that way.
And so that started the birth of Restore 22.
Yes.
Now we're here, time for our mid-break over here, a word from the wonderful sponsors to put Dr. Ed Show on the air. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Restore 22 and an event that's coming up. Back to the Dr. Ed Show. Our number here, 844-302-1250, 844-302-1250. If you have any questions for Rob or Christine or any comments, you can have the opportunity to meet and listen to author Joe Allen, Dark Eon, Transhumanism. And that's going to occur November 8th. It's a Wednesday. Doors open at 6. Joe's going to start talking at 6:30. He will be on my show here on the 4th, which is next Saturday already. And the talk is going to be at El's Cafe. That's 440 McMurray Road, Bethel Park. You don't have to register, and it's free. Christine and Rob are talking about something that's extremely important, and that's PTSD and veterans. Because I think if any group of anybody in employment, in life, that group is subject to PTSD because of what they see and what they experience. I mean, you can have an accident, you can have a medical thing, and something happens, and you have that for a short period of time. But I think some of the things that you've seen, they never leave you. They stay with you. Is that true, Rob?
That's true.
So who came up with the Restore 22 idea? I'm betting it's Christine. But
Well, actually, both of us. About maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we went to visit my sister in North Carolina. She told us that we had to go visit this awesome place. So we went, and it was, Richard's Coffee Shop. And Richard was a Vietnam veteran who owned a coffee shop in Mooresville, North Carolina. He passed away from effects of Agent Orange, and the people around him wanted to honor his legacy, so they turned the coffee shop into a nonprofit. Rob and I went there about, like I said, 7 or 8 years ago, and walked in and were absolutely amazed. It's a little mini museum full of artifacts from military artifacts from starting with World War I up to present day. And then when you make your way through the museum, you get to the coffee shop, and it's a hub of activity, and there's veterans there, and there's civilians there. And we were there on a Saturday, and it was their jam session Saturday. So down in North Carolina, they played bluegrass music, and this place was hopping. And we likened it as a cross between a USO and a VFW. And it was amazing. And we just felt the energy, and we thought, how can we bring this to Pittsburgh? But 8 years ago, the timing wasn't right for us. But a year ago, we started to think about it, and things had changed in our lives, and it looked like it was a little bit more doable for us. So that's where Restore 22, the idea for our coffee shop started. The name Restore 22, the 22 stands for the 22 veterans a day who commit suicide.
Which is astronomical.
It is astronomical. There are some studies that say that number should be doubled. But whatever number somebody wants to use, because there are varying studies that show varying numbers, whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. The fact is that it's happening, and it's happening at a high rate. And we want to do something about it. So when Rob went to get help, finally, he went to see a doctor. The doctor said, "You don't have PTSD." He said, "You have depression and anxiety. Take these 5 medications and go home." And that happens to a lot of people.
So that's treating a symptom and it's making you numb so that you don't function. That's basically what's happening there.
Exactly.
And you're looking for basically a cure to overcome this depression and anxiety, not suppress it.
Correct.
And you had that mindset.
Right. I wanted to learn how to deal with it without medication. I'm not a big fan of a lot of medications, and I know there are medications that some people definitely, it does help them. But for me, I was feeling very strongly that I did not want the medications. I had to look for alternatives. And when I started realizing that what we call talk therapy with a therapist, which could be a social worker, a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever works for that person. And I found someone that worked for me, and it was great.
So this coffee shop idea is extraordinary. I mean, I've met some of the greatest people at coffee shops that I would hang out. In Peters Township, there was the Farmhouse Coffee, Bob Chapman's place that I used to hang. I was there daily. Made some great friends as a result of that. And then moved to Arizona, and there was a place called the Grotto, and the same thing happened. And you're able to, in a relaxed mode, meet people and talk.
Right.
And that's the concept you have for this coffee shop. On Tuesday, November 7th, of course, Quinn and Rose are going to be there. I can't be because I'll be working. And it's at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., so 2 hours. And it's going to be at the Friendship Perk and Brew, and that's 300 South Pacific Avenue, Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And where exactly in Pittsburgh is that?
So that's the Friendship part of town, which is next to Bloomfield, close to West Penn Hospital.
And what are you going to be doing there?
So we are taking our show on the road, shall we say. Once a month, right now, we host a coffee and camaraderie for military veterans and those who are currently serving close to us in Coriopolis. We're taking that show on the road now to different locations around town where veterans are invited to come and enjoy a cup of coffee, share some stories, and at the same time, we're going to be recording our Restore 22 Coffee Roadshow podcast.
And Rose is going to be there doing that with you?
Yes, Rose is there. Will be there assisting us with the podcast.
And
We'll have a variety of guests that'll come and speak. And we're looking forward to the opportunity to meeting everybody out that way and promoting our mission around Pittsburgh.
And Quinn is going to be there as well.
Yes.
So there's a great opportunity to accomplish something.
Yes. And Friendship Perk and Brew is veteran owned. So the owner, Nick, is a Navy veteran from the 80s, and he is very accommodating and very happy to help us out with this.
Awesome. You know, we have a caller,
Awesome.
Rob and Christine. Let's take our call. It's my buddy Gary. Dr. Fiber, good morning. Oh, that didn't click. Dr. Fiber, you there? There you are.
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So first of all, Edmund knows I'm old enough to have friends in Vietnam, and a number of them came back with PTSD. And secondly, I want to tell you that I congratulate you for your service, and I congratulate the two of you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And seriously, because I have great respect for anybody that has served. My question to you is, sir, did they ever prepare you when you were in basic training or any part of your service experience about what might happen, or did they avoid any conversation about this PTSD situation and how you might confront or handle what you confront in these places? I can hang up and listen.
And by the way, I met Dr. Gary Fiber at a coffee shop.
Perfect.
Of course.
So I don't ever, in my 33 years, ever remember anybody in any career field talking about PTSD, if that's what your question was. As far as preparing, they can prepare you as much as they can on how to handle a weapon, how to take shelter, proper care of yourself, things like that are real important, how to do your job, in stressful situations, and, how to take care of your buddies and stuff like that. But I don't think anybody can prepare anybody for anything that, how do you tell somebody to prepare for an airplane ride who's never been on an airplane? I can go down a couple different avenues to try to make some assimilations like that, but I don't think, I know I was never not prepared, I should say. I was not prepared to experience what I was experienced, and I was not prepped because I don't think they could have prepped me for it, because I could have gone and had a great time. And some people, maybe they did because they didn't experience that.
So, Rob, initially you were told, take this medication and go home and live your life.
After the fact, yes.
But you didn't do that. So what did you do and who did you see that helped you get over the hump?
So I found a psychiatrist on my own, and I used the company that I was working for, I used the medical provider assistance that they had, the healthcare, and I was able to utilize that through this psychiatrist on my own for about a year. And I let him know right up front I was not comfortable with the idea of taking medications, and we talked and walked through the whole process at that point.
So you met and you talked your way out of depression and anxiety?
I wouldn't say I talked my way out of it. I would say that the skills that were given to me, that we explored on different things, because that's a big part of it too. With anybody, you have their own self-talk. And if your self-talk is negative, you're going to be negative.
You're absolutely right.
So if you're able to say, hey, cut that crap out, I'm not going to listen to the self-talk that's negative, turn it around and look for the things that are positive. That's what's important. So that skill set was probably brought up a lot more.
Because it comes self-fulfilling. If you're thinking down and you're thinking negatively, that ends up what's happening in your life.
Exactly.
If you elevate and think positively and make positive thoughts, you're then on that track to accomplish those.
Exactly.
And medication's not going to do that for you.
No, it's
just going to numb you.
Exactly.
Well, see, you were perceptive enough to see that. Some people aren't.
That's what scares us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the importance of being able to sit down in a place like a coffee shop and have these conversations. Because it's much like this talk show. We say things that people don't hear in mainstream radio or TV, and they're not aware.
Right.
And making it aware can lead to some good things. Hey, we're at our third break. We'll be back. We're back to Dr. Ed Show, and we're here with Rob and Christine Ree, and we're talking about PTSD and how to overcome it, basically. And one of the ways that they're going to do it is with Restore 22, and it's going to be a coffee shop. Where are you going to try to open this coffee shop?
Well, we live in Moon Township, and we would like it to be close to us since we're going to be there every day. Right now, we think there's a lot of awesome things happening in the town of Coraopolis, which is just down the hill from us. A lot of new businesses coming in, a lot of revitalization in the area, a real positive attitude going on down there. So we think that would be a good home for us, but most importantly, it's on the bus line, which will make it easier for some of our veterans to come to us.
So you're going to focus on veterans, but it's open to the general public, and it's a great way for people to communicate that aren't in the military,
Exactly.
the people that were in the military or currently active in the military.
Yes. So less than 1% of the population serves. So that leaves the other 99% of us, not fully understanding what sacrifices our service members make but also the sacrifices that their families make. So when somebody comes into our coffee shop, a veteran, say, comes in by himself, maybe he's looking for some companionship. You know those table cards they have at weddings, tells you what number it has a number, tells you what table you sit at. We're going to have cards that say, please join me. So somebody who's looking for some companionship could take one of those cards and put it on their table. Perhaps a civilian comes in looking to, shoot the breeze and sees the veteran sitting there, and they can walk up and say, hey, I see you're looking for company. Can I hear your story? And we're going to have suggestions on questions to start conversations with veterans, because sometimes people don't know what to ask.
Well, you hear this a lot. Thank you for your service, but what does that really mean?
I just wrote a message on that in my newsletter I sent yesterday. What does thank you for your service mean? Do we really know what we're thanking that veteran for? Do we take into account the first steps that they missed, the high school plays and graduations, all the holidays, all those important milestones in our lives that they miss regularly? How do we thank them for putting their lives in danger so that I can sit here and enjoy all those holidays with my family? And I can live my best life while they're out there being separated from theirs. I don't know. Thank you for your service sounds so meaningless when you think about all those things, but I think it's the best as civilians that we know how or what to do. But what I would like to encourage people to do is, especially this Veterans Day, if you're out and about, a lot of our veterans will enjoy a meal of appreciation at a local restaurant. And you'll see them there. You'll know them by the hat that they wear. Some of them will be sitting by themselves. When you say thank you for your service, take a minute to ask them their story. Ask them where they served, what branch. Let them talk to you a little bit. Give them the gift of your time. I think that's important.
It was really interesting. Years ago, I was flying somewhere, and I'm a member of all those airport clubs and so forth. And there was somebody in the military, and I said, "You traveling by yourself, and what are you doing?" And he was in uniform, and I said, "Come into the club with me." Perfect stranger. I didn't know him. I never saw anybody so appreciative of something because he was, those clubs are nice,
Right.
and you have snacks and meals and drinks and so forth. And he was just so appreciative that somebody appreciated him.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
You have a thought I know that you want to communicate. I can see your mind clicking here, Rob.
So it's funny you said that because I did put my hand up and Christine cued in on that right away, just as you did. And she was already speaking it as soon as I put my hand down. Basically, not just supporting the veterans, which is extremely important, but just from what she went through, a civilian might come in and say, "Hey, I'm not the veteran, but my husband, my brother, or somebody in the family is, I'm looking for some resources. Can you help me do this or that?" And that's one of the things that we want to provide in the coffee shop as well, is if that wasn't emphasized enough, but the resources that are available to not only the veterans, but the families as well. Real important there. Because like she said, they weren't really there. They weren't there that plainly, visibly to see for her to go after and help.
Right.
And people really don't get the impact on the person that's serving and the families that don't have their person with them,
Yep.
their loved one with them. How often were you able to communicate with Christine when you were deployed?
I think it was pretty
It was
even.
almost every day.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty even.
So this is by phone or text? How is that?
Skype?
Skype.
Skype.
Yeah.
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 It's a little different
But
than
it's
the
different,
Vietnam
though.
days.
But that wasn't, it's not the same. Even though I got to see him, that put my mind at peace for that moment. But as soon as we hung up, it was going to be another 24 hours before I could talk to him. So I'm still worried every day.
Sure. And at the same time, Rob, you're worried what's going on in Christine's daily life because you're not there to be
Right.
supportive for her.
Yeah.
So
That's-
that you
that's a
can
good
see where
point.
this conflict occurs, and then the things that you visualize that that the average person here doesn't see. I mean, we might have a problem, see an accident and then not get that picture out of your head for a while, but you're living that stuff on a daily basis
Right.
in a war zone,
That's correct.
and the impact just stays there. It's like how do you get those pictures out of your head?
Talk about it.
You know, and the PTSD never goes away. We still deal with this every day. You just get better at managing it. So it's still there. We don't fight like we used to. We're happier than we were then. But it's still there. There's no magic cure to make it go away and turn him into the person he was before he left. That doesn't happen. And
Nope.
a lot of people don't understand that too, right?
That's true.
Well, I got to commend you for your approach and not numbing yourself down with drugs and trying to function in your daily life. We're at the end of our show. It was an incredible show, and I think an informative show for people. So tell us again the Restore 22 coffee shop that you plan on opening real quick.
Yes, so we're going to open a coffee shop, hopefully in Coraopolis. We are currently raising funds to be able to do that. We have a goal of $100,000, but that could be significantly less if we find a space that's already set up for us. So if you like what you heard today, we would just ask if people could make a donation to us.
Awesome. Tuesday, November 7th, Quinn and Rose will be there. You're doing a podcast at Friendship Perk and Brew, 300 South Pacific Avenue, Pittsburgh, 10 a.m. to 12. And do people need to make a reservation?
No.
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 And your contact, restore22.org.
Correct. Restore22.org.
And why did you pick 22?
22 veterans a day commit suicide.
Incredible. We got to do something about
Yes,
that.
we do.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Rob and
Thank you.
Christine Reed, for being on Dr. Ed Show. Remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're healthy, you're happy as well. God bless. We'll talk to you next week.